We'll call to order the Monday, April 28th meeting of the Verona Common Council. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll have the roll call. Please. Miss, I was going to say Lynch. Ms. Schofield.
Alderperson Diaz.
Here.
Alderperson Doyle.
Here.
Alderperson Linder.
Here.
Alderperson McGilvery.
Here.
Alderperson Reekie. Here. Alderperson Steiner.
Here.
Alderperson Touche.
Here.
And Alderperson Yers.
Here.
We have everyone present this evening. Thank you for that. Next on the agenda, we have public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak this evening? Anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Third and final opportunity. Anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Included with your packet were minutes from April 14th and April 15th. What is your pleasure?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Yers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Reekie. Were there any additions or corrections to either one of those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried, and the minutes are approved. Under Mayor's business, I have a proclamation this evening. And this is for the City of Verona 2014 Arbor Day proclamation. Whereas Arbor Day was first observed in Nebraska in 1872 by the planting of more than 1 million trees throughout the state. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed in all 50 states from Maine to California, and whereas the City of Verona has annually earned the distinction of being named a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, beautify our community, and protect our environment. Now therefore, I, John Hokemer, Mayor of the City of Verona, do hereby proclaim Monday, April 28, 2014 as Arbor Day in the City of Verona, and encourage all citizens to observe Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees in order to ensure the beauty and value of our community for generations to come. Dated this 28th day of April 2014, signed by myself as the Mayor of Verona. But if you're going to plant trees, do it when it's a little bit warmer outside and not rainy, if that ever happens. Mr. Steiner.
Thank you, Mayor. As part of that recognition, we're required to have a public presentation, and we fulfilled that with David Walker's presentation last Friday, the 25th, during the brat sale at the Senior Center. And he and his staff did a very nice job presenting what they have done and what they plan to do, and it was well received. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Next in our mayor's business, we have appointments to boards and commissions. These are the citizen appointments. We're passing those around right now. The first thing I will mention, if you look on the very bottom of the page, there are two appointments that will be outstanding as of this evening. One is to the library board. We will be making two appointments, but holding one vacancy. I'm still waiting to hear back from one potential appointee. And then the Verona Economic Development Corporation, we make the appointment, the city does, but it is a recommendation from the Chamber of Commerce. And we had an individual who had been serving from the Chamber of Commerce but no longer lives or no longer works in the city. So that is the reason for that, and I've spoken with Carl Curtis. So as soon as we have a recommendation from them, we will move forward. I have the appointments before you. I will just read the names, and then there's three people that are new appointees, and I'll just tell you a little bit about each of them. To the Community Development Authority, it would be a reappointment for Kathy Bartles, and then a new appointment is Erin Welty. Erin lives at 792 Wayland Road. She previously, until a short time ago, worked for Veerbecker, and her background there was she did market analysis and economic development consulting. She recently went to work for the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and her title there is Downtown Development Account Manager. Erin is very excited about serving the City of Verona, And we talked a little bit about the downtown study and some opportunities that we have as a city. For Fitcherona EMS Commission, it will be a reappointment for Joan Sullivan. The Library Board, we have 3 vacancies with the Library Board, and the second one, the second name here, Elanya, is, I'll speak to Elanya first. The Verona Area School District gets to make a recommendation for an appointment, and again, that appointment is made here, but we take the recommendation of the school district. So Elanya Patterson lives at 915 Walnut Street, and she would serve a 3-year term, would be the Verona Area School District appointment. The name above is Suzanne, and I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce the last name. It's Olajos, and Suzanne lives at 668 Harvest Lane. Some of you may remember that she came and spoke during the budget time on behalf of the library and the importance of the library. She is a part-time attorney. She has some young children in the city, and I thought it was also interesting that both her mother and her grandmother had served as librarians in the past. Parks and Recreation and Forestry Commission would be reappointments of Mark Giesfeld and Paul Schmidt. Police and Fire Commission be reappointments of Steve Heinzen and Jolene Semen. There's an asterisk next to Steve Heinzen, and when we were going through the records, we found out that he should have been reappointed last year, but he was appointed to fill someone else's term, and it wasn't a 5-year term. So we're cleaning everything up, making sure that he has the appropriate term. For the Verona Economic Development Corporation, to be a reappointment of both Sean Cleary and Larry Sager. The Zoning Board of Appeals would be Steve Heinzen, Mike Long, and Larry Sager, and all 3 of those will be appointments. That is what I am recommending to you this evening, and I would ask for your confirmation.
I move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Reekie. Were there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries, and as soon as we have the other names, I will bring those forward to you. That concludes my report, so we will move to the administrator's report. Mr. Burns, please.
Yes, thank you. I have a few items this evening. First of all, a couple of meetings and events that will be coming up. The annual Dane County Cities and Villages meeting will be held on May 7th, starting at 5:30 p.m. City of Verona is hosting that at Gray's Tide House. On May 8th, which is Thursday, there will be another meeting of the Ad Hoc Public Safety Committee, which is working on the fire and EMS station project. That meeting is at 5:30 p.m. at City Hall. Also, the evening of May 8th, there will be a hearing held on the potential for the establishment of fees for the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission. That is going to be held at the town of Westport at 7 p.m., and that's something that the Dane County Cities and Villages Association has been following very closely. A couple other items coming up that I wanted to mention. First, the Chamber of Commerce had approached me about if there'd be interest in coordinating between the city and the chamber on an economic development program for local officials. And there's a program that the Wisconsin Economic Development Association puts on that they do a one evening, about a 3-hour session. It's designed for business and elected officials in the community. The goal is to talk generally about economic development and then get into some of the specifics of the community and their plans. And I've kind of heard it described as it's trying to get everyone on the same page for what the general goals and principles of economic development should be, and it's a good starting point for future discussions. We've contacted them to find out what their availability for doing the training program would be. One date that looked like it may work is May 19th, which would be the 3rd Monday in May. And I wanted to see if there was interest from the council, and if so, availability that evening for doing the session. We would work with the chamber on setting a location. The thought would be that the city and chamber would co-sponsor it. We'd probably be inviting chamber board members, city council, plan commission, and then see kind of what the level of interest is and how many spots are available after that. But I've heard good feedback on it from other officials and from chamber people that have talked to people in other communities where they've done this program. So again, just wanted to put that out there and see what people's level of interest would be for that.
You said that was the 19th?
It would be the 19th, Monday the 19th, and probably 5:30 to 8:30 that evening.
What are your thoughts? Bill and I discussed it. We think it's a really good idea and something that we should do sooner rather than later. Mr. Yers?
I agree. I mean, I would be happy to attend. It'd be a good education for me. I've been trying to learn as I go, but a training where we can all sit down together and really work collaboratively, I think that would really be advantageous for the city. So I'd be happy to attend.
Other comments, thoughts, or Ms. Reekie?
I would love to attend. I think it would be I think it's a great opportunity. May 19th would not work for me, but if it works for everyone else, I think it should happen.
Mr. Linder?
Yeah, I'd also like to attend. I'm not 100% sure on that date either. I know there's something else going on, but I might still be able to make it work. Definitely be interested, though.
Yeah, I'd be
That's
interested in attending, and the date works fine.
Okay. Is there anyone else, I don't want to shut off any comments here, cut off comments, but is there anyone else that cannot make it on that evening? That you know already that you cannot make it? You don't know?
I don't know. I'd have to validate, but I also want to.
Yeah, that's just one date that we've looked at. We can look at other dates. The reason why we were trying to look at that one was because it was a Monday when we don't have a council or plan commission meeting, and generally it seemed like Mondays have been good choices, but maybe if people could follow up with me if they don't know their schedule. I'll send out an email in reply to that. If it doesn't work for a number of people, we can see if we can get some other alternative dates. Okay, and then just last item I had is the second council meeting in May would be scheduled for the 26th. However, that's Memorial Day, and normally when a council date would fall on a holiday, it's held on the Tuesday following, so that would be the 27th. And unless the council would want to take action to select a different date or to not hold a meeting, that would be the intent, to meet on the 27th, assuming we have business for the agenda. Okay.
I know I have a conflict that night, but if everyone else can make it, I suggest that's when we do it.
And I can include that in the email as well, and if anyone else has a conflict, let me know.
I will be in Bayfield. Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Burns? Seeing none, we will move on then to the engineer's report. Mr. Gunlock, please.
Thank you. An update on the Lincoln Street reconstruction and water main replacement project. Last week, the pre-construction conference was held. The contractor's schedule was discussed, and it indicates that work will commence May 15th and be completed by August 29th. The street will be closed south of the south driveway to City Hall to everybody except local traffic. During construction, the local traffic will be provided access to their driveways to the extent possible during construction, and two-way traffic will be maintained during non-work hours and on weekends. Side streets off of Lincoln Street will be open except for Oak Court and Holiday Court, which will also be under construction. The other item I have this evening is just an update on the 2014 residential construction that I know of in the city to date. We see at least 3 residential developments in the city. Scenic Ridge Phase 6 is proposed with 26 single-family lots. That has been approved. Cathedral Point Phase 4 with 48 single-family lots is currently under review. The extension of Prairie Way Boulevard and the Murray Glen Apartments was issued erosion control and stormwater management permits today. So that basically says those projects will start, I assume, as soon as the developer agreements have been signed and weather permits. We also know of plans where we have seen plans for 2 apartment buildings on Lot 2 of the Scenic Ridge subdivision. That's under review by staff at the current time. And in addition to the Scenic Ridge and Cathedral Point developments, the remainder of Locust Drive to the south city limits will be reconstructed this summer. It's going to be a busy summer. Going to be a lot of construction around town. So drive carefully in construction zones. That ends my report for this evening. Any questions?
Is there any questions for Mr. Gunlock? Mr. Linder?
The Locust Drive, does that include the bridge over the highway?
No, not this year. I think that's scheduled for 2016 or 17. 17.
Other questions for Mr. Gunlock? Seeing none, thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
We will move on then to the committee reports. We'll begin with the Finance Committee. Mr. McGilvray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under item 9A1, I'll make a motion to approve payment of the monthly bills in the amount of $332,905.66.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. In the way of explanation, two of the larger items from this month's bills, first being to Alliant Energy for our electric bill in March. That's $28,703.03. The second being to Madison Met Sewage District in the amount of $208,033.09 for our sewer service.
You've heard the explanation of the major expenditures. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, the motion before you is to approve the payment of bills in amount totaling $332,905.66. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. Under item 9A2, I'll make a motion to approve resolution R-14-014 authorizing the reissuance, modification of the interest rate, payment terms, and structure of this structure of City of Verona, Wisconsin, of industrial development revenue bonds to Latitude Corp project in the amount of $3,045,000.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvray. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Doyle. Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. On May 13, 2004, the City of Verona issued $5,500,000 of variable rate industrial development revenue bonds on behalf of Latitude Corporation to finance the construction of their facility at 1003 American Way in the City of Verona. Industrial revenue bonds are a conduit financing tool that allows qualified projects to obtain tax-exempt financing. These bonds are not a general obligation of the city, and Latitude is solely responsible for all bond payments. The Latitude Corporation has requested that the city consent to a restructuring and reissuance of the bonds in order to allow for changes in the interest rate, payment terms, and provisions of the loan agreement. Latitude Corporation would remain responsible for all bond payments following the reissuance. Resolution R-14-014 and the related bond documents have been reviewed by the city's bond counsel, Quarles and Brady, and their comments have been incorporated into your final documents. Mr. Brad Stork from Latitude is here with us tonight to answer any questions. We did have several questions at the committee level, which he was able to answer. Mr. Burns answered. This resolution received unanimous support at the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. McGilvray. Are there any questions or are there any additional comments? Any questions? Mr. Touche.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just what are the existing terms of the bonds that were issued in 2004?
Sure. And if you would identify yourself.
Yeah, my name is Brent Stork with the law firm Michael Best and Friedrich out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm actually bond counsel on the transaction. I apologize. I'm not representing Latitude Corp directly. He does. Latitude Corp does have separate counsel. The bonds. What we're doing right now is the bonds had previously been issued and they had been supported by a letter of credit that was issued by U.S. Bank. That was 10 years ago. Over time, the economics of these deals have changed a little bit. Now they're going to simply be held directly by U.S. Bank, and we're in front of the council to allow for that restructuring of the bond transaction. The underlying economics, as shown in the bond agreement, is the maturity of the bonds remains the year 2024. That isn't changing. They're amortizing over the remaining 10-year period of time. Not quite straight line amortization, but an amount sufficient so that in 10 years the bonds will be paid in full. And the interest rate is changing to a LIBOR-based pricing plus a spread of 175 basis points. In terms of the issuer, though, the city of Verona, nothing is changing. This is purely a pass-through conduit type transaction. The issuer has no responsibility for any of the payments or no responsibility for any of the administration of the bonds. And in fact, all of your costs are going to be paid ultimately by the borrower as part of this transaction. Does that address your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, this resolution would require, approval would require a roll call vote. So seeing that there are no questions, we will have the clerk read the roll, please.
Alderperson Diaz.
Aye.
Alderperson Doyle.
Aye.
Alderperson Linder.
Aye.
Alderperson McGilvery.
Aye.
Alderperson Rieke. Alderperson Steiner.
Aye.
Alderperson Touche.
Aye.
And Alderperson Yurs.
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you for being here this evening. Is there anything else from the Finance Committee, Mr. McGilvray?
That would be all, sir.
All right, thank you. We will move on then to new business. And Mr. Burns, do you want to start us off here, please?
Yeah, we have two items under new business. The first relates to our intergovernmental agreement with the City of Madison, and the second relates to the lawsuit regarding the lawsuit with Local 311 IAFF. Both are noticed to go into closed session. What our suggestion is that we give an update on both items in open session, and if there's any factual questions that can be answered in open session, we do that. And then we could have potential action, which would be separate motions to go into closed session on the two items. That would avoid the need of having to go into closed session, come back to open, and then go back into closed and come back out. To get started, I can provide an update on the agreement with the City of Madison. And we had talked about this at our Committee of the Whole meeting back in January, I believe, but for the benefit of those that weren't here, the city has a 20-year agreement, intergovernmental agreement, dealing with several issues on our northern boundary, and that agreement is scheduled to come up in 2016, and it would be automatically renewed unless either party provides at least 1 year notice of our intent to not renew that agreement. The City of Madison has reached out to us. They are interested in negotiating a successor agreement, making some modifications, and then re-entering into an agreement. The key terms of that agreement are first that it provides for an open space corridor between Madison and Verona, and a lot of that has already been established in area that Madison owns or Dane County owns. One component of that affects the city of Verona for future development is there is a provision that there would be an open space buffer surrounding the County Highway M and County Highway PD intersection that would be 300 feet wide, extending 1,000 feet in either direction from that intersection. From some of the preliminary conversations we've had with City of Madison, I think both City of Madison staff and Verona staff are open to looking at alternatives to that, recognizing that the character of that area is very different from when this area was originally put together with this agreement. The agreement also establishes a joint planning area in approximately that same location surrounding the County PD and County HEM intersection, so that as specific development plans would go forward, there's an opportunity for each community to review and comment on those. And then the agreement also establishes a future jurisdictional boundary between the two cities, and the agreement sets that for the area we're talking about along County Highway PD, extending from that intersection west to Shady Oak Lane. The agreement does not address the areas west of Shady Oak Lane. And that item is something in particular I know the City of Madison is interested in having discussions with us, and I would suggest that that be a discussion that we would have in closed session to talk about negotiating strategy related to this agreement and the City of Madison. Are there any just kind of factual questions about the agreement at this point?
Mr. McGilvray?
Thank you. So the review component that you mentioned, is that just an information gathering review component, or is there actually any jurisdictional authority by either community over a development that may or may not happen, whether it be in Madison or Verona?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Ms. Burns.
Yeah, in practice, it has primarily been a review component, although the wording is not completely clear. There's some language in there that would suggest perhaps there should be approval by the two parties, and again, I think that's something that if we're doing a successor agreement or modifications to the agreement, we may want to address the wording in that provision.
Thank you.
If there are questions or comments prior to us going into closed session?
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention too, if there aren't any other.
Mr. Diaz had a question, I
sorry.
think, first.
I might have misunderstood what you had said earlier, but is this the time to ask open session questions about the firefighters lawsuit, or?
I was just going to suggest that our city attorney, Brian Kleinmeyer, is here. He was going to provide an update and then could answer open session questions on that item.
Okay, anything you wanted to add, Mr. Burns?
No.
Do you want a motion to go for both of them right away?
Why don't we have Brian do the update and then we can take
Okay.
action.
All right. Go ahead. Brian, if you would, please. Mr. Kleinmeyer?
So we had the hearing in the lawsuit with Local 311 on Thursday. Unfortunately, the judge ruled in favor of the union in the case, and it was a summary judgment hearing. Both parties agreed that there were no issues of fact and the case could be decided based on the legal arguments. The court, I think it's fair to say, ruled in favor of the union because he thought that was the fair thing to do. That was the term that he used multiple times. And so the bottom line is, as a result of the judge's decision, the city at this point is required to bring over the 5 firefighters who had been employed by the fire district. And as a result of the order that the court had issued back in December, they have been here by court order as firefighters for the city. The city is also subject to the labor agreement that had been executed by the fire district and the union. I can certainly answer any questions that you may have right now. I'm here also to provide maybe a little bit more in-depth information about options that the city may have in closed session.
Mr. Years?
How long does the fire district agreement, how long is that going to last?
Well,
the continuance of it?
It concluded on December 31st, but it remains in effect until the parties, if and when the parties negotiate a successor agreement. Although typically, if, for example, the fire district had not dissolved and a new city fire department had not been created, the normal practice would have been at some point in time starting last year, probably the fire district and the union would have started negotiating changes to that particular agreement, but it's not like they would have negotiated an entirely new agreement. You just kind of pick and choose. Typically, benefits, wages are things that you would address in negotiating a successor to an already existing agreement.
Other question, Mr. Diaz?
Yeah, I had a few questions. So, as the situation stands now, how would this interfere with the city's ability to go forward with 24-hour fire protection, which would probably involve hiring new firefighters?
We'd have to take essentially what the city has to do now is it has to operate within the confines of the current labor agreement. The changes that the city may or may not be able to make to the fire department within the confines of the labor agreement was a short discussion during the hearing. I would say that we've had a preliminary discussions at a staff level at what can the city do within the confines of the labor agreement, but I think we need to take a closer look at that. So the answer is maybe. We might be, but we have to look at what our rights are under the labor agreement.
Go ahead, Mr. Diaz.
How much staff time was spent so far helping on the court case?
Mr. Burns?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. I would need to try to put together an estimate of staff time that was involved. We would have records for attorney's time that was spent, but I would need to talk with other staff and put that estimate together.
Further questions or comments? If not, potential motion to go into closed session. Mr. Diaz?
I would like to make a motion. I have to read the statute as I do it. Okay. This is not the motion staff requested, but I would like to make a motion to go into closed session to discuss the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Madison regarding land use, community separation, and municipal jurisdiction. The Common Council may convene in closed session as authorized by Section 1984 1E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of discussing and negotiating strategy regarding the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Madison that for competitive and bargaining reasons requires a closed session. The Common Council may reconvene in open session and discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session.
We have a motion by Mr. Diaz. Is there a second?
Second.
And the second is by Ms. Doyle. The motion to go into closed session requires a roll call vote.
Mayor, just a clarification, I think there might have been a typo. It should be 85, not 84. Did you say 84? I meant to say 85. Okay.
It says 85. So we have a motion by Mr. Diaz, second by Ms. Doyle to go into closed session. It does require a roll call vote. Ms. Schofield, if you would, please.
Alderperson Doyle.
Aye.
Alderperson Linder.
Aye.
Alderperson McGilvery.
Aye.
Alderperson Rieke. Aye. Alderperson Steiner.
Aye.
Alderperson Touche.
Aye.
Alderperson Yurs.
Aye.
And Alderperson Diaz.
Aye.
And the roll call vote passes on an 8-0 vote. We are now in closed session.
Oh.
Session concerning case number 13CV3717, Local 311, IAFF, AFL-CIO versus City of Verona and the Verona Joint Fire District, currently in the Dane County Circuit Court. The Common Council may convene in closed session as authorized by Section 19-85, Parent 1, Parent G of the Wisconsin statute for the purpose of conferring with City of Verona legal counsel who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the city with respect to litigation in which it is involved. The Common Council may reconvene in open session to discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in the closed session.
We have a motion by Mr. McGilvery. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Touche. This would also require a roll call vote, and we would have Ms. Schofield read the roll, please.
Alderperson Linder.
Aye.
Alderperson McGilvery.
Aye.
Alderperson Rieke.
No.
Alderperson Steiner.
Aye.
Alderperson Touche.
Aye.
Alderperson Yurs.
Aye.
Alderperson Diaz.
No.
And Alderperson Doyle.
No.
The motion passes 5-3, and we'll let the minutes reflect that Alders Rieke, Diaz, and Doyle voted no. We are in closed session. We are back in open session. Next agenda item is approval of operator licenses. Ms. Schofield, please.
We have operator licenses from Andrew Fanzelbear at Monty's and Janie Ritter for Hometown Days.
Do we have any potential motions?
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Yurs. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Touche. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion carries. Do we have any announcements this evening? Mr. Steiner?
Thank you, Mayor. We are fast approaching our annual citywide yard sales, garage sales, and I know there are several people that are asking a lot of questions about advertising signs, and I would like to remind the public that according to our ordinances, we may not put any advertising sign in public property, nor can we attach our sign to any existing post in public property, such as a stop sign or a school zone sign. Any advertisement must be on the inside of the sidewalk, on private property, and it must be your property, or you obtain permission from the person who owns that property. And I know we have our police patrol going around and removing signs presently, and I've received calls about this. Please remember to keep the yard signs where they belong, and have a good time and sell all your junk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner. Any other announcements this evening? Seeing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order. We have a motion by Ms. Reekie. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Diaz. All in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we are adjourned. Thank you.